Imagine inheriting a massive, echoing mansion with boarded-up windows, a sprawling estate that once held your family's vast financial empire, but now sits completely empty because the generational money ran dry. Thick dust covers grand marble halls where tens of millions of dollars were once spent on lavish galas without a single worry for the future. The sheer scale of the sudden financial collapse leaves nothing but hollow rooms and unpaid property taxes. This is the chilling reality of vast corporate empires and trust funds that seemingly vanish into thin air within a matter of decades. The immense wealth did not just slip away during a bad stock market crash or a sudden economic depression, but was systematically destroyed from the inside out by the very descendants meant to protect and grow it. It is a slow, agonizing financial bleed driven by pure negligence. The total, irreversible ruin of these great family fortunes leaves behind a dark, psychological mystery about what really happens to money when it is passed down through bloodlines. Financial historians and estate planners constantly study these spectacular collapses, searching for the exact moment when a carefully constructed trust fund transforms from an impenetrable fortress of wealth into a rapidly sinking ship. There is a grim, almost unavoidable pattern hidden in the shadows of extreme wealth, known among wealth managers simply as the three-generation rule. This brutal cycle always begins with the first generation, the relentless founders who build the initial fortune with their own blood, sweat, and endless sacrifice. They understand the exact value of a dollar because they had to fight tooth and nail for every single one of them. Then comes the second generation, who grew up watching that intense struggle and usually managed to barely hold on to the money, maintaining the status quo out of respect for their parents. But by the time the third generation eventually takes over, having never known the backbreaking hard work it took to build that initial capital, the entire financial empire inevitably crumbles to dust under the weight of their unchecked entitlement. This brutal cycle is not just a myth. It is a statistical certainty that wipes out a staggering 90% of wealthy families by the time the grandchildren are in charge of the bank accounts. According to global wealth consultancies, only 1 in 10 inherited fortunes survives past that critical third-generation milestone, leaving the vast majority of heirs completely bankrupt and entirely unprepared for the harsh realities of normal life. We all share the deep, fundamental hope of leaving something valuable behind for our children, truly believing we are giving them a beautiful gift that will make their adult lives significantly easier. You work hard your whole life, saving every extra penny in retirement accounts and college funds, dreaming that your kids will never have to face the agonizing financial struggles or crushing debt that you did during your own youth. But the unsettling truth of wealth transfer is that handing over a massive fortune without teaching the strict financial lessons required to maintain it is exactly like handing a child a lit match in a bone-dry forest. Without knowing the hidden dangers of inflation, taxation, and predatory investments, that loving financial gift quickly turns into a toxic curse that burns their entire future to the ground in record time. To truly understand this dark trap of inherited money, we must look at the most famous and chilling warning in American financial history, the legendary Vanderbilt family. Back in the 19th century, Cornelius Vanderbilt started with a single passenger boat and aggressively built a massive, monopolistic empire of steamships and transcontinental railroads across the entire country, cornering the transportation market with an unmatched level of fierce business acumen. He was notoriously ruthless and deeply driven, financially crushing anyone standing in his way until he became the absolute richest man in the whole world. When he finally died in 1877, he left behind a staggering $100 million, a mountain of gold so incredibly huge that the general public thought it could never possibly run out, no matter how hard his privileged children tried to spend it. Yet, the massive, seemingly invincible railroad empire that Cornelius built with an iron fist began to crack and splinter almost as soon as the patriarch was put in the ground. Without his terrifying oversight and strict financial discipline, the heirs immediately began liquidating crucial company assets to fund their own personal desires, setting the stage for one of the most catastrophic wealth destruction events ever recorded in modern history. The true, staggering tragedy of the Vanderbilt heirs is genuinely hard to believe given the sheer math involved. They built giant, sprawling palaces on Fifth Avenue, threw wildly expensive costume parties that cost millions of modern dollars for a single night, and recklessly threw away the company profits on thoroughbred horses and European art, blindly trusting that their endless money pool somehow had absolutely no bottom. Just 50 short years after the great builder died, the giant, sprawling family gathered for a highly publicized reunion, and the chilling financial reality finally set in for everyone present. Out of all the dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren standing in that lavishly decorated room, there was not a single remaining millionaire left among them, proving that no amount of money is truly safe from generational incompetence. The greatest private fortune the modern world had ever seen up to that point was completely gone, entirely swallowed up by incredibly bad investment choices, massive estate taxes, and a total, devastating lack of life purpose. The opulent Vanderbilt mansions were quietly sold off to commercial developers or demolished completely, leaving behind nothing but empty lots and a legendary cautionary tale for the rest of the financial world. Why does this rapid financial decay happen so incredibly often to almost every single extraordinarily rich family across the globe? What is the dark, fundamental flaw inside of human psychology that makes people so quickly destroy the very assets, businesses, and safety nets that were generously handed to them completely for free? Wealth managers and behavioral economists have spent decades trying to decode this exact self-destructive phenomenon. The true mystery of this collapse is not actually found in the offshore bank accounts or the fluctuating stock market, but deep inside the fragile human mind. Unearned, sudden money acts exactly like a heavy, intoxicating drug, severely twisting a person's basic sense of reality until they completely lose all biological drive to work, to build meaningful careers, or to even survive on their own merits in a competitive society. To properly figure out the mechanics of this deadly cycle, we have to look incredibly closely at the psychology of the first generation, the obsessed, visionary builder. Building massive, generational wealth from absolute scratch requires a dark, incredibly heavy focus that entirely takes over a person's entire life, often pushing out everything else, including normal human empathy, basic relaxation, and healthy relationships with their own immediate family members. The builder is almost always ruthlessly driven, working day and night for decades on end, completely sacrificing their physical health, their personal free time, and even the emotional bonds with their own spouse and children. They pour all of their available mental energy strictly into the growing business, leaving absolutely no time to properly raise or discipline the very children who will one day inherit everything they just built. The obsessed builder spent every waking hour building an empire but left behind a fatal blind spot. Inside the grand homes of the newly rich, a chilling silence surrounds the topic of money. The founder controls every single penny that flows into the family business, tracking every deal with a ruthless grip. Yet when they sit down at the dinner table with their own children, they never speak a word about how that wealth actually works. They buy their kids the best clothes and send them to the most expensive schools, but they hide the harsh realities of the world outside. The children grow up in a bubble of pure comfort, completely blind to the brutal math of survival. They see the private jets and the endless flow of cash, but they never see the sleepless nights, the bitter fights, or the heavy risks it took to get there. The very person who built the fortune becomes a wall, blocking the heirs from learning the exact skills they will need to keep the money alive. This total lack of training turns the family fortune into a ticking time bomb, waiting for the exact moment the creator takes their final breath. Then comes the sudden, crushing day of the funeral. The builder passes away, and it is not just a moment of deep grief, but the detonation of a massive financial blast. In a single afternoon, millions of dollars and heavy company duties are dumped straight into the shaking hands of heirs who have never balanced a checkbook. The ultimate safety net is ripped away without warning. Lawyers slide thick stacks of paper across cold wooden tables, demanding choices the children do not understand. The heirs stare at bank accounts holding more money than they can even picture, feeling totally lost in the dark. The doors to the real world are kicked open, and the wolves are already circling, waiting to take advantage of their deep confusion. The second generation steps into the shadows left by a giant, crushed by a silent and heavy weight. They know they did not earn this empire, and they carry a deep, burning fear of being the ones who break it. This endless terror of losing everything clouds their minds and drives them to make terrible choices out of pure panic. They either freeze completely, locking the money away and letting it slowly rot from bad advice, or they swing wildly in the other direction. Desperate to prove they are just as smart as the founder, they throw huge sums of cash at risky, foolish ideas. Every mistake they make eats away at the foundation, pulling the family closer to the edge of ruin. Crushed by the impossible task of filling the founder's shoes, the heirs watch the fortune begin to crack and bleed. As the money starts to slip away, a cold rot spreads through the heart of the family. Brothers and sisters who once played together in the backyard now stare at each other across legal tables with eyes full of deep suspicion. Every shared memory is burned away by dark, bitter fights over who gets to control the shrinking pile of gold. The fortune that was meant to keep them safe instead turns them into bitter enemies. Whispers of betrayal fill the empty halls of their huge homes, and secret meetings are held behind locked doors to plot against their own blood. The wealth acts like a poison, killing the love and trust that once held the family together. The grand family estate transforms into a dark battlefield, where the only victors are the lawyers charging by the hour. By the time the third generation is born, the final stage of the curse takes hold with brutal force. These grandchildren never met the obsessed builder who started it all, and they never saw the dirty, painful struggle required to make a single dollar. From the moment they take their first breath, they know nothing but pure, unearned luxury. To them, money is not a tool or a reward for hard work, but a magical river that just keeps flowing no matter what they do. They grow up completely detached from reality, believing the world owes them an easy life just because of their last name. The drive to work, to create, or to build is entirely dead, replaced by a hollow expectation that they will always be saved. Living inside a golden cage of endless comfort, the grandchildren step blindly toward the edge of a steep cliff. Without any real purpose or struggle to give their lives meaning, the third generation often wanders down a very dark path. The massive wealth stops being a blessing and twists into a highly addictive drug that numbs them to the real world. They chase empty thrills to fill the deep hole inside their chests, buying fast cars and throwing wild parties to hide their intense boredom. Soon the money is drained to feed terrible habits and destructive addictions that destroy their bodies and minds. The family name, once a symbol of great power and hard work, becomes tied to public shame, arrests, and tragic early deaths. The fortune does not protect them from pain, but instead acts as a giant magnifying glass for their deepest human flaws. The grand empire finally crumbles into dust, leaving behind broken people who were destroyed by the very money meant to save them. Then comes the day the vault is finally empty. It does not happen with a loud crash, but with a quiet, devastating phone call from a private bank in Manhattan. The endless credit lines are suddenly cut off, and the exclusive black cards are declined at luxury hotels without any prior warning. Panic sets in as the heirs look at the final accounting numbers. The massive industrial empire they thought would last forever is completely gone. They realize they are totally helpless, having never learned how to survive in the real world without the multi-million-dollar safety net that just vanished overnight. This total ruin is often caused by a silent killer hiding in the legal paperwork. Bad estate planning acts like a slow poison to a family fortune. When the founder dies, they frequently leave behind vague succession rules, missing trust documents, or poorly written wills that ignore modern tax laws. These critical mistakes act like a match dropped into dry grass. Without clear legal steps, the surviving family is left guessing what the builder actually wanted them to do. The confusion quickly turns into intense anger, tearing the remaining fortune apart piece by piece through endless arguments over asset distribution. The messy legal paperwork becomes a dark cloud hanging over the family home. The ancestral estate, once a powerful symbol of unity, transforms into a disputed asset tied up in probate court. Unpaid property taxes accumulate while heirs argue over basic maintenance costs, leaving the physical structures to slowly decay. Sometimes the builder tries to stop this ruin by controlling the family from the grave. This legal concept is known as the dead hand. They set up strict punishing rules that lock the money inside incentive trusts, forcing the family to obey their exact career or marriage demands for cash. The mental impact on the living heirs is absolutely chilling. The family feels like prisoners to a ghost, trapped by the rigid demands of a patriarch who is no longer there. This heavy financial control breeds deep resentment, making the children actively hate the very wealth that was supposed to protect them. This bitter anger slowly rots the family from the inside out. The trust fund becomes a weapon used by trustees to punish non-compliance, pushing alienated heirs towards severe substance abuse. They engage in reckless spending just to rebel against the suffocating financial architecture that is actively trapping them in permanent adolescence. As the family breaks down, dark figures wait in the shadows. Outsiders begin to circle the dying fortune like hungry predators. Unscrupulous financial advisors, fake friends, and aggressive litigators identify the fractured family dynamic. They see a wounded, angry group of heirs as the perfect target for a lucrative extraction scheme. These predatory outsiders easily trick the confused and vulnerable family. They whisper sweet lies and promise total victory in court, slowly draining the last of the liquid assets into their own pockets through massive retainer fees. When a family is broken and alone, they will trust anyone who pretends to care. The final destruction of the wealth usually happens in a cold, highly public courtroom. Decades of private family fights spill out into the open record for the whole world to see. Brothers file brutal injunctions against sisters, and adult children demand forensic financial audits of their own elderly mothers. It is a step-by-step horror show as blood turns against blood. They submit their darkest, most shameful secrets into evidence just to win a piece of the broken empire. By the time the litigation exhausts itself, the rival legal teams take whatever money is left, leaving the family with nothing but hate. The loud sound of the judge finalizing the bankruptcy marks the official end of the family name. The once great empire is legally dissolved, and the remaining physical assets are quickly auctioned off to satisfy creditor claims. A legacy previously associated with massive industry is permanently reduced to a cautionary public tale. The heirs who lose it all are left carrying a heavy, crushing weight. The mental pain of being the exact generation that destroyed the family name is profound. They must wake up every single day knowing they actively ruined the massive fortune that took an entire lifetime of relentless labor to build. A deep, terrifying shame follows them like an inescapable shadow. They must live with the ghost of a ruined reputation, knowing former peers look at them and see only absolute failure. The billions of dollars are completely gone, but the heavy, suffocating guilt of their financial incompetence never leaves them. The fallen family members often hide from the world, entirely unable to face the public ruin they caused. Stripped of their social standing and financial armor, they retreat into total isolation. They are completely unequipped to navigate a harsh reality where their last name no longer commands respect or opens exclusive doors. Society operates under the persistent illusion that a sudden pile of money would solve all of our problems. We dream that immense wealth will wipe away our sadness and instantly fix our broken lives. But the documented history of dynastic collapse proves something very different about the dark reality of human nature. Massive wealth does not fix your internal problems at all. It only acts as a powerful magnifying glass, making your hidden cracks and dark flaws much bigger. If you are already angry, suspicious, or deeply lost, an inheritance of millions will only push you much further into the absolute dark. The sudden rush of millions does not magically heal a broken mind or erase deep psychological trauma, but instead acts as a violent accelerant that only feeds the darkest parts of who we already are. Sudden liquid wealth provides unlimited resources that give dangerous power to our deepest paranoias and untreated addictions, speeding up a catastrophic personal ruin that might have otherwise stayed safely hidden behind the daily struggle for basic survival. When a great family loses an empire built over a century, casual observers and financial journalists almost always blame external forces like a sudden crash in the stock market, crushing inflation, or bad mathematical forecasts. But behavioral economists and private wealth psychologists who study these ruined dynasties know the truth is much more human and ultimately much more tragic. The plunging stock charts and terrible quarterly numbers are just financial smoke, hiding the real fire of internal family collapse. Forensic accountants and estate lawyers who dig through the legal ashes of these lost fortunes almost always find the exact same sad clues scattered across the wreckage. They rarely find the root cause in simple mistakes on tax forms or poor banking choices made by wealth managers. Instead, they find a devastating paper trail of broken trust, decades of silent anger, bitter lawsuits over minor assets, and estranged blood relatives who simply forgot how to talk to each other. When investigators conduct a final autopsy on a collapsed financial dynasty, the documented cause of death for these massive fortunes is almost always a catastrophic failure of the human heart and family unit, never a simple failure of the underlying math. The ledgers only bleed after the family bonds have already been completely severed by greed, suspicion, and deep resentment. Yet, operating quietly in the shadows of all this spectacular public failure, a tiny glimmer of statistical hope remains for those willing to look. Only about 10% of these ultra-wealthy families actually survive the deadly curse of the third-generation transition. This rare fraction manages to build lasting private empires and philanthropic foundations that stand remarkably strong for hundreds of years, carefully preserving their original capital while everyone else completely falls apart. This incredibly rare rate of survival forces a chilling question upon financial historians and sociologists who look closely at the data. What deep operational secret do these few enduring families hold? And what dark psychological truths about human nature are they willing to face that the other 90% of failed dynasties completely ignore? The answer lies in their absolute refusal to trust human nature with unlimited capital. Their quiet, multi-generational success proves definitively that financial ruin is not a fixed biological fate for the wealthy, but avoiding that destruction requires an incredibly rigorous path that most modern parents are simply too afraid or too exhausted to walk. It demands a brutal level of emotional discipline that directly contradicts the modern instinct to shield children from every possible hardship. The rare families who actually beat these devastating statistical odds do not do it by hiding the harsh realities of the world or giving out easy cash to soothe guilty consciences. They break the generational curse through a brutal, almost painful honesty about exactly what unearned money can do to a developing person. They force the younger generation to learn the hard, unforgiving lessons of physical work and market worth long before they ever see a single dime of inheritance. Instead of handing over a blank check on an 18th birthday, the matriarchs and patriarchs of these surviving clans build a strict, heavily monitored training ground. They make their children practically prove they can handle the heavy psychological weight of the family name, pushing them through intense financial education and requiring them to achieve independent professional success that leaves absolutely no room for spoiled habits or entitled expectations. A famous, comprehensive study published by a global wealth council in 2003 looked deep into the private historical records of these rare survivors across the world. The preserved documents showed a harsh, demanding reality where standard family meetings felt much more like intense corporate boardrooms. Inside these closed doors, every potential heir was rigorously tested, financially audited, and strictly measured against the cold, uncompromising standard of the Central Family Trust. But successfully saving the family tree from financial rot comes with a remarkably heavy, sometimes entirely heartbreaking personal cost. To keep the century-old legacy alive, the appointed leaders of these families must often make desperately cold choices that can easily feel like a direct betrayal of parental love. They must possess the terrifying willpower to look a destructive, addicted, or reckless child straight in the eye and completely cut off their cash supply without hesitation. Deliberately denying resources and money to a struggling loved one goes against every natural, biological feeling a protective parent inherently possesses. Yet the stewards of these enduring fortunes know that putting the long-term survival of the whole legacy above the temporary feelings of one erratic person is the only proven way to stop the financial rot from rapidly spreading to everyone else in the bloodline. This brutal discipline leads to the most chilling truth found in the quiet, wood-paneled rooms where these legacy families meticulously plan their distant futures. They understand that the money itself is an entirely dead, unfeeling instrument. It has no human soul, absolutely no loyalty or memory of who earned it, and completely lacks any ability to care for or protect the fragile human hands that currently hold it. If a wealthy family only passes down massive stacks of cash, stock portfolios, and real estate deeds with nothing else attached, they are simply passing down a financial corpse. The cold gold will inevitably attract endless flocks of societal vultures, including opportunistic scammers, predatory advisors, and false friends, eventually rotting away the isolated lives of the unprepared heirs who do not know how to bring that capital to life. True, lasting generational wealth is never actually found in the dead coins, the offshore bank accounts, or the physical properties, but rather in the living, breathing values meticulously instilled into the specific people who inherit them. The ultimate asset is the psychological resilience and the fierce work ethic of the heir, not the balance of the trust fund. The real underlying goal of a smart, multi-generational family plan is not simply to build a giant legal wall of trusts and offshore accounts to protect the gold from government taxation. The true, hidden goal of these complex legal structures is to build a strong psychological shield designed specifically to protect the vulnerable heirs from the corrupting influence of the gold itself. Smart, enduring families actively use their vast wealth as a precise tool to build up a deep, undeniable sense of human purpose in their children through forced entrepreneurship or dedicated philanthropy. They know with absolute certainty that if they do not give their heirs a strong, compelling reason to wake up and work hard every single day, the inherited money will quickly turn into a heavy iron chain that drags them down into a dark abyss of depression and substance abuse. By focusing all of their vast resources on building incredibly strong, resilient people instead of just guarding tall piles of dead cash, these rare, disciplined families finally manage to break the deadly cycle of ruin. They transform a statistical curse into a permanent legacy, ensuring their name and their empire will continue to thrive long after the original founders are gone. Picture two very different rooms at the end of a long family line. In one room, angry cousins sit in a cold courthouse shouting over the last few dollars of a dead empire. Their lives are empty, bitter, and broken by the fight for what is left. In the other room, a family sits together around a warm table, planning how to use their shared resources to help their community. They did not just pass down cold cash. They built up the human beings who would hold it, creating a strong chain of purpose that outlives any bank account. This exact difference forced a massive shift in how the law handles old money. Judges grew tired of watching massive estates tear themselves apart in bitter lawsuits. Because of these endless court battles, modern trust laws were completely rewritten. New legal tools were created, demanding that families write down strict rules for how their heirs must behave to get the money. The law itself had to step in to stop the bleeding, but the damage from a fallen empire always spreads far beyond the family tree. When a massive estate crashes, the ground shakes for everyone standing nearby. Think of the small towns that relied on the family factory, or the thousands of workers who lost their jobs when the third generation gambled the business away. The collapse leaves behind empty buildings and quiet streets. Whole communities are left to sweep up the dust when the golden heirs finally run out of luck. This pattern of ruin changed the entire financial industry. By the late 1990s, banks in New York and London realized they were losing billions every time a wealthy founder died. They created a brand new type of job to stop the bleeding. Wealth managers were no longer just looking at math and stock markets. They had to become family doctors, holding secret meetings to fix broken relationships and angry children before the founder even passed away. The financial world finally admitted that human feelings destroy more fortunes than bad math ever could. Yet, even with all these new rules and experts, a dark shadow remains over every great fortune. No lawyer or bank can ever truly know what is inside the heart of an unborn child. The great unresolved question still haunts every estate plan. How do you give a young person enough money to do anything without giving them so much that they do nothing? No legal paper has ever found a perfect answer to that deeply human puzzle. This failure to find a perfect answer has left a permanent mark on our culture. We no longer look at massive inheritances as a pure blessing. Instead, society now views endless family wealth as a heavy, dangerous trap. Modern founders often announce to the public that they will give everything to charity when they die, leaving very little to their own children. They have learned from the ghosts of the past that handing over an empire is often a curse in disguise. For the heirs who are cut off, the sudden silence is absolute. They are forced to step out of the giant shadow of their ancestors and finally face the real world with their own two hands. Some sink under the weight of the lost name, but others finally learn how to build a life that actually belongs to them. In the end, the only thing that truly lasts is not the gold, but the grit it takes to earn it. The grand mansions of the past now stand as quiet museums, their dusty halls serving as a chilling reminder that money without purpose will always find a way to destroy itself.